The Chicago White Sox fell to the Cleveland Guardians on Thursday afternoon. Sox scored one run in the first inning, and that was it. How are those last few bench and utility spots shaping up? Versatility and the ability to help put the White Sox in a position to win are critical. So who's in and who's out at this point? Also, the legend Nancy Faust returns as she will be playing the organ at Friday's game as the Sox host the Cubs at Camelback Ranch.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. Happy St. Patrick's Day, under 2 weeks away from opening day as our White Sox head to Houston. Appreciate you continuing to pass along this podcast to other White Sox fans in your life. Get those questions and comments in for our mailbag episodes, lockedonsocks@gmail.com. Our White Sox have an 8-7 record. This spring, they lost to the Cleveland Guardians Thursday afternoon, 5-1. Rule 5 draft pick Nick Avila trying to win a bullpen spot. He started the game, and boy, he had a very rough inning, first inning that is. Avila, some serious problems, gave up a hit early, ended up hitting Jose Ramirez, walked Josh Bell, and then Naylor hit a grand slam. It sounded from the announcers that it left the complex. I was listening just through the MLB app, and of course it was the Cleveland announcers. They were freaking out at just about everything that came off of a bat, and with Naylor's grand slam, they lost their minds. If you were listening to the audio, you know what I'm talking about. So Naylor goes yard, pitch clock violation on Avila, a strikeout. Then Kurt Hassler comes out to make a visit. Avila eventually got out of the inning, but he only went one inning, gave up 2 hits, 4 earned runs, a couple of walks, and 2 strikeouts. And of course, that home run again was the grand slam by Naylor. Sox used Middleton, Schultens, Lambert, Shaw, and German after that. In total, Sox used 6 pitchers. They gave up 5 runs, 4 walks, and 9 strikeouts. White Sox offense, not much going on at all. This was the starting order. You had Andrus, Colas, Benintendi, Grandal, Berger, Sheets, Alberto, Reyes, and Romy Gonzalez was back in there. Andrus and Benintendi with some offense in the first inning, and Sheets had a double in the second inning, but that was really about it for our White Sox. Listening to the Cleveland announcers kind of talk about the whole situation with letting Jose Abreu walk, and it's always fascinating to listen to, an opponent's broadcast team. I had the MLB extra innings package many years ago when I was living outside of the Chicago area. And when the Sox were on the road, you would usually get, you would get whatever the home team's broadcast, duo was. And interesting to see what they had to say about our White Sox and these particular announcers for Cleveland on Thursday afternoon. They were very confused on the 3-year, $60 million deal that the Astros gave out. I guess Cleveland was very much in on Jose Abreu, but they said there was no way the Guardians were going to give that kind of money to Abreu. So just one of those things, always interesting to hear what other folks are saying from out of town about our White Sox. Offensively, the Sox just had that 1 run, 8 hits, 2 extra base hits. And first, they really came in the first 2 innings of the game. Sox were 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Benintendi had the lone RBI for the Sox. Tristan McKenzie was on the mound to start things off for the Guardians in Thursday's game. He went a total of 4 innings, giving up just 1 run on 5 hits. Now, we're going to see a lot of McKenzie this coming season. Obviously, in spring training, you will sometimes see pitchers that, you're just not going to see during the regular season. That team is just getting a look, and they might spend a lot of their time maybe in AA, maybe in AAA, or they might be thrown in the bullpen like Avila might be for the White Sox. Well, McKenzie, we're going to see him a lot. And McKenzie was 4-0 in 4 starts against our White Sox last season, giving up only 6 runs in 15 innings. He can be very tough, and he was against the White Sox last year. So something to come this season, 2023. You've been following the World Baseball Classic. If you even haven't been following the World Baseball Classic, huge news that we're going to talk about in a moment. But first things first, Team USA beat Colombia Wednesday night 3-2. Tim Anderson 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. It was really the Mike Trout show. He was the hero in that game. Kendall Graveman pitched an inning, gave up 1 hit, 0 runs, and had a strikeout. USA will play Saturday. So Dominican Republic and Eloy Jimenez, they are out of the tournament. Eloy, I don't know if you were watching or saw the replay. He attempted to make a catch on Wednesday when he was out in the outfield. It was a horrible technique. No surprise there. But, after everything was said and done, he thankfully was able to walk away without an issue. Pedro Grifol said Eloy Jimenez is flying back to Arizona, said he might give him a couple of days before throwing him back into Cactus League action. Now, big-time drama in that game. You've probably heard about it, even if you're not following World Baseball Classic. Mets closer Edwin Diaz suffered a complete patellar tendon tear in his right knee during Puerto Rico's celebration after defeating Eloy Jimenez in the Dominican Republic on Wednesday night to advance to the quarterfinals of the World Baseball Classic. Diaz was expected to undergo surgery on Thursday. The timeline for such an injury is around 8 months, according to general manager Billy Epler. That would mean Diaz, who signed a 5-year, $102 million contract with the Mets this offseason, would likely miss the entire 2023 season. And he signed that contract early in the offseason, and it was during a celebration. I believe it was around the mound. You couldn't get a good look at what happened to his knee and to his leg. A really crazy fluke accident. And I unfortunately can't help but think about that Eloy Jimenez injury back in 2021. Happened in late March. I don't even like bringing it up, but we're talking about Jimenez. We're talking about spring training stuff. Jimenez jumped for a ball out in left field, trying to rob a home run in spring training, Cactus League play. He tore his pectoral muscle, missed a good chunk of the season. It's just get back to Glendale, Arizona, healthy. All the folks playing in the World Baseball Classic, Moncada still in action too. And then get to Houston healthy. I mean, that is the big focus. And you wonder, if you wonder that last week, of spring training, Sox wrap up, I think, on a Wednesday. And then there's an off day on Thursday. And then, they wrap up, I think, on Tuesday. There's an off day on Wednesday, and Thursday, March 30th, is opening day for the entire league. And the Sox, of course, will be in Houston. You wonder that week, like Monday and Tuesday, maybe even Sunday, what kind of players are seeing playing time. I'm sure Grifol's got his starting lineup. He knows who's going to be leaving Glendale, Arizona, and heading to Houston. So you wonder what guys, how much rest is he going to give guys down that last stretch? So nobody is really making an airtight case for the last few roster spots. Sox are obviously looking for versatility, but will money owed be the deciding factor? More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Hey, really excited about our new partner and sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game, Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your professional baseball franchise? Where your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, scouting and drafting players, navigating your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Now is your chance to prove that you can be more confident than Rick Hahn. No guarantee that you'll have as much job security as him, but it'll just be fun to have his seat at the table over and over again. Hopefully, you will be able to set the market and be proactive instead of reactive. Locked On White Sox listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com. Scan the code or look it up in the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your fantasy dynasty today. So how about those last few bench utility spots? We were talking bullpen in the previous Lockdown episode, and there's some interesting articles that have come out recently. One was on whitesox.com, one was in The Athletic, about these last like 4 spots, I guess. Now, Sebi Zavala, I mean, he's a lock. He's going to be your backup catcher. So then it kind of comes down to 3 guys. You've got Sheets, who can play, obviously some infield. He can play in the outfield. I don't think he should. And of course, a DH, he's got that power left bat. Leury Garcia, we know about the money that's owed to him. Hasn't really been performing well at all in Cactus League play. Hanser Alberto, he's the new guy. He's got some experience with Pedro Grifol. Grifol has nothing but high praise for Alberto, and he's been playing pretty well in spring training. And then you've got the return of Billy Hamilton, everything he meant to that 2021 team, the culture, the speed, a defensive replacement. So those are really, I think, the key names. There was a Gavin Sheets article by Jesus Cano on whitesox.com recently. I don't know if you saw it. This is what Cano had to write up. Gavin Sheets will be relied upon heavily this year by the White Sox to step up to the plate and play anywhere around the diamond. It was one of the first things discussed when Pedro Grifol took over as the new White Sox manager. The conversation between Sheets and Grifol set the tone for the season, but it also provided a sense of comfort with the new coaching staff. I thought that was really important, Sheets said, to come in and be ready to go at every position they need me to go in. Left field, right field, first base, DH, whatever they need. My job was to come in and prove that I could continue to play all those positions and help this team win in any possible way. That's what I really respect. They asked us what we expected from them. So it wasn't just what they expected from us. The communication right off the bat was great. Cano wrote, ultimately, Sheets said he wants to be the versatile left-handed bat and difference maker who will help the White Sox win enough ball games to return to the postseason. He feels the team's attitude and culture is heading in the right direction with the fresh coaching staff. It's just a little bit more energy this year, Sheets said. We're going to play the game really hard this year. We're going to put a lot of pressure on other teams. The coaches are great, very detailed, and communicate great, and they're here to win. They know what we have to do here. They know the talent that we have in this building. They're ready to do everything it takes to win. No denying that Gavin Sheets is going to have a spot. His lefty bat, especially with the shift being banned, I just don't like the idea of him out in the outfield. That was one of the biggest problems that the White Sox had. There were a lot of them, but one of them were guys playing out of position and the opposition putting pressure on us, taking advantage of corner outfielders that had no business being out in the corner. And that's what I thought we were trying to avoid this season. Set everybody up for success. I got no problem with Sheets at first base, DH. I just don't want to see him out there in left or right field. So going to the James Fegan article, and thank you so much, Jim, for the comments, LockedOnSox@gmail.com. He read the same article I did, as I'm sure most of you did. If you don't have access to The Athletic, I got you here. Fegan went through his list of, who's in, who's out, as Scott Merkin did a few weeks ago. And Fegan's got Billy Hamilton as one of the guys that is going to be making this club. Fegan wrote, Hamilton is Hamilton. He's still very fast. He still seems to get great jumps and reads all the time. And he's still a smiling and joyous presence in every clubhouse card game. And while he laid down a walk-off bunt the other day, the bat doesn't lend itself to regular starts. While we're rolling, let's throw in a Grifol quote that probably doesn't help the Hamilton case. Outs are precious to me. We have 27 and we can't waste them, Grifol said. It's not so much stealing bases that I'm focused on. If they're there, we'll take it, of course. But I don't think we're going to be like a base-stealing team. I think we're going to be an opportunistic base-stealing team. I just want to make sure we take 90 feet whenever they are giving it to us, whether it's an overthrow in the outfield, a ball in the dirt, which, by the way, we've got to do some drills on balls in the dirt. I just don't want to be always on high alert for 90 feet. Now, just to go back to my previous comments on Gavin Sheets, that's what other teams were doing to us. They knew they could get that 90 feet on one of our corner outfielders. So back to what Fegan had to say, but Grifol certainly has alluded to coveting some late game speed. And while Reyes has come on offensively recently, his center field defense is more fringy. I'm kind of on the fence with Hamilton just because, the lack of pop you're going to get with his bat, but I trust him in the outfield as a late game replacement much more than I would a guy like Gavin Sheets. And I like what Hamilton can do with the legs. Will we be stealing more bases? Grifol, I don't think wants to tip his hand, but I think the Sox will. I think the Sox are going to be aggressive. I really do. In terms of infielders, Fegan talked about Andrew Vaughn, Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson, Elvis Andrus, obviously Gavin Sheets, and put Leury Garcia in that list of his. This is what Fegan said. Look, if it truly is possible for Hanser Alberto to beat out Garcia for the reserve infielder job, the Stars are certainly aligning for it. Playing under a manager who knows him well and lauds his clubhouse presence, Alberto 9 for 19 with 5 extra base hits as having a make-the-team type of spring performance. In describing a lineup he expects to have 7 to 8 regulars on it, Grifol envisions his fourth bench players as specialists who would offer specific matchup advantages on rest days for his starters. If only Grifol provided some sort of example of what he means by specialists, Fegan wrote. We need a combination of 4 players that we feel like we give a day off to a certain starter. We feel like we have this type of player that's elite at this, that puts us in a position to win a baseball game, Grifol said. Those are elite at something. Alberto is elite against left-handed pitching. Billy Hamilton is elite as a defensive replacement, base running and speed. They all bring something to the table. For us, it's going to come down to the best combination of how we feel we can give days off and still be in a good position to win a ball game, or late in a game we can feel like we can run. We feel like we can defend. Fegan said Romy Gonzalez has options left and has been out of game action for a week amid what Grifol terms as body soreness, but is seemingly being groomed for a Garcia-like multi-position role in the future. Between him, Lenyn Sosa, and Jose Rodriguez, the Sox have short and long-term competition for Garcia's spot to consider. So I'll end things here before I talk myself out of my pick any further, Fegan wrote. So no real surprises anywhere else in Fegan's predictions in terms of course, bullpen and starting pitcher and so forth. It's really these reserve spots, bench, utility. Now, of course, Sheets, right field, first base, DH. I think the White Sox front office, everybody, you could have probably penciled Sheets in November. Now, Hanser Alberto, boy, I mean, he's hitting like 480 in the spring. Again, it's the spring, but compared to some of the guys he's up against, like Garcia, it's pretty impressive. Grifol's got a past experience with Hanser Alberto. Like Grifol didn't sign Leury Garcia. Leury Garcia just kind of came with the job, as did a lot of other players. But these fringy type players, they might be type of guys that like Grifol wants, like his wish list that I've talked about before. I look at Hanser Alberto as one of the guys that Grifol wants. I mean, he speaks nothing but high praise on his clubhouse presence, the chemistry, culture. I haven't heard Grifol say a ton about Leury Garcia, but Leury Garcia is owed a lot of money. Okay. And again, that's not Grifol's doing. That's Rick Hahn in the front office. So I find it hard to believe that Leury Garcia will not make this team. Now, if he doesn't hit, and he's a waste of space the first couple months, then what do? Do you DFA him? I mean, Dallas Keuchel was DFA'd in late July last season. I mean, right now, Leury Garcia is hitting, he's 5 for 25 in Cactus League play with 1 home run and 2 RBIs. What I really don't want to see is he make the team because of this money owed, and we've got a guy like Hanser Alberto that would be a better fringy type player, that he can play multiple positions. He's got pop with the bat. He's a good clubhouse guy. I'm not saying Leury Garcia is not a good clubhouse guy, but if Hanser Alberto is Grifol's guy, well, let him have that. The Sox are just going to have to eat a lot of money that I don't know if they're going to do. It's going to be an interesting decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if Leury Garcia is on this team. I would go with Sheets, Alberto, and Hamilton, and of course, Seby Zavala is going to be your backup catcher. Legendary organist Nancy Faust returned to the ballpark on Friday as the White Sox host the Cubs in Glendale, Arizona. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So on Friday, folks that are in attendance for that game and even watching, because it's going to be on NBC Sports Chicago, the Sox will host the Cubs. Mike Clevenger is going to be on the mound. They should be in their green uniforms, obviously, for St. Patrick's Day. And Nancy Faust, the legend, will be playing the organ at the game. Faust, of course, 41 years for the White Sox, featured in the last Comiskey documentary, and also in the Chili Dog MVP book, just to name a few spots. There was also a wonderful, comprehensive article a few years back with ESPN entitled How Nancy Faust and Her Organ Set the Tone for America's Pastime. It's worth just looking up that article. If you're someone that may be a little younger of a Sox fan, don't quite remember Nancy Faust, she was something else. She was just an inventor, and so much great praise over the years. She really deserves a statue at the ballpark, or a distinction by all the retired numbers. Some teams have done this, namely the Milwaukee Brewers. They've got a Bob Uecker kind of distinction, a plaque by all their other retired numbers. I think you do something for Hawk Harrelson, you do something for Ed Farmer, and you definitely have something for Nancy Faust. So something to definitely watch and listen to on Friday. Saturday, the White Sox take on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Michael Kopech gets his second start of the spring. How many innings will he go? How will his pacing look? He seemed to sound like he was a little gassed in his first start, trying to get used to the pitch clock. I'm sure there was some, just some adrenaline going. So be interesting to keep eyes on that. The game will be on ESPN 1000, so you can listen to that, and you might even be able to catch it on the MLB app. And then on Sunday, White Sox visit Peoria, Arizona, to take on the Seattle Mariners. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTV. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get your questions in for next week's mailbag, lockedonsox@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. Now, for your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Win Your League by listening to Matt and Dom. Every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, on the next episode, I will recap the weekend that was for our Chicago White Sox as we inch closer to opening day. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.